Just learned something that will change how he thinks about what money can and cannot buy. You can purchase a real submarine, not a toy, not a replica, a real pressure vessel designed to operate beneath the surface of the ocean. You can own one with money today. The problem. And this is the economic detail that changes everything about the submarine ownership story. Is that what you cannot buy at any price? Is a submarine that reliably and safely dives? Because the gap between owning a submarine and operating one is filled with certification requirements, insurance unavailability, corrosion physics, and the shadow of an event in June 2023 that permanently altered the economics of every private submarine in the world. Today, I'm going to decode the complete economics of submarine ownership, the 3 lanes that lead into the market, the corrosion war that begins the moment you take delivery, the OceanGate factor that changed everything, and the military submarine economics that represent the most expensive operational assets in the history of human engineering. Lane 1, the decommissioned military submarine market. Here is the first and most accessible lane into submarine ownership, and the one that produces the most spectacular gap between apparent affordability and actual operating cost. The United States Navy periodically decommissions submarines that have reached the end of their operational service life and disposes of them through processes that depend on the submarine's classification and nuclear status. Conventionally powered submarines are occasionally sold to allied nations for training or parts, occasionally donated to maritime museums as static display vessels, and occasionally sold through government surplus channels for scrap. The price of a decommissioned submarine hull, stripped of all weapon systems and classified technology, ranges from approximately $50,000 to $500,000, which sounds remarkably affordable for something the size of a building that was built for $3 billion. But the acquisition price is where the economic story begins, not where it ends. A museum that acquires a decommissioned submarine for public display faces immediate costs of between $200,000 and $2 million just to stabilize the hull for static display. Painting, sealing, structural reinforcement, accessibility modifications, safety systems for visitors, and the ongoing annual maintenance of a steel vessel exposed to weather and humidity runs between $50,000 and $200,000 per year before a single visitor pays admission, and that is for a submarine that will never dive again. The economics of trying to make a decommissioned military submarine operational are essentially prohibitive. The systems required to safely pressurize and dive a submarine of that size and complexity, the life support, the ballast systems, the navigation, the communications, the propulsion, would require complete overhaul at costs that would exceed the original construction price of the vessel. Lane 2, the private luxury submarine market. Here's where the economics of submarine ownership connect to the ultra-luxury world we decoded in the Rolls-Royce video, and where the numbers become simultaneously more accessible and more dangerous. Private submersible manufacturers. Triton Submarines in Florida, U-Boat Works in the Netherlands, Nuico Research in Canada produce what are properly called personal submersibles, not submarines, a distinction that is legally and technically significant. A personal submersible is a small pressure vessel capable of carrying 1 to 12 people to depths ranging from 100 meters to 3,000 meters, certified by the appropriate maritime classification authority, and designed for recreational, research, or yacht tender applications. A Triton 300/3, capable of carrying 3 passengers to 1,000 meters depth, costs between $3.7 and $5 million. A U-Boat Works Super Sub, capable of reaching 300 meters with 2 passengers, costs approximately $4 million, and a full-size yacht tender submarine, the kind that deploys from the deck of a super yacht and allows the owner to explore the ocean floor beneath their anchorage, costs between $25 and $80 million, and the annual operating costs of these certified private submersibles begin at approximately $300,000 per year for the smallest certified vessels, and rise to $1 million or more for the larger yacht tender configurations, covering annual hull inspections, battery replacement cycles, life support system certification, pilot training and retention, and the increasingly expensive insurance premiums that followed June 2023. The OceanGate factor. Here's the event that permanently altered the economics of every private submarine and submersible market in the world, and that must be understood by anyone considering submarine ownership in 2026. On June 18th, 2023, OceanGate's Titan submersible imploded during a descent to the wreck of the Titanic in the North Atlantic, killing all 5 people on board, including OceanGate's CEO Stockton Rush. the Titan had been designed using a carbon fiber hull, rather than the titanium or steel pressure hulls used in certified submersibles. And the Marine Technology Society, the primary professional organization for submarine certification, had written to OceanGate as early as 2018, warning that the experimental hull design was potentially dangerous. OceanGate had charged each of its 5 passengers $250,000 per dive, and had used the revenue to fund continued operations without pursuing the third-party certification that the industry standards required, and that the experimental hull design had never passed. The economic calculation that OceanGate made, that the cost of certification could be avoided while still charging premium prices to customers, was the most catastrophic financial decision in the history of private submarine operation. And the economic consequences for the entire industry were immediate and permanent. Insurance underwriters, who were already cautious about private submersible coverage, became extraordinarily reluctant to provide coverage at any price. The certification requirements that OceanGate had attempted to avoid became the focus of intense regulatory scrutiny in multiple jurisdictions. And the reputational damage to the concept of privately operated submersibles set back the market development by an estimated decade. Any operator of a private submarine or submersible in 2026 is paying significantly higher insurance premiums, facing more rigorous certification requirements, and navigating a customer base that now associates private submarine operation with the Titan disaster before any other association, the corrosion war that never ends. Here is the technical economic reality that makes submarine ownership different from every other vehicle or property we have covered in this series. The ocean is the most corrosive environment on Earth. Seawater contains dissolved salts, oxygen, and biological organisms that attack every metallic surface they contact, with a persistence and effectiveness that no coating or treatment can permanently stop, only slow. A submarine hull that is properly painted and maintained begins showing measurable corrosion within months of first deployment, and the economics of fighting that corrosion for a vessel that must maintain watertight integrity under enormous pressure are relentless and escalating. The annual hull inspection required by certification authorities for an operational submersible costs between $200,000 and $500,000 and must be performed by qualified inspectors using specialized equipment. The 5-year pressure hull recertification, which involves pressurizing the hull to test structural integrity and identifying any degradation, costs between $500,000 and $2 million depending on vessel size and depth rating, and any corrosion damage discovered during these inspections requires immediate repair before the vessel can be certified for further operation, at costs that are determined by the severity of the problem rather than any budget. The military nuclear submarine economics. Here's the economic scale that makes everything else in this video look modest by comparison. The Virginia-class attack submarine, the current standard nuclear attack submarine of the United States Navy, costs approximately $3.4 billion per vessel to procure, $3.4 billion for one submarine, and the operating cost over its 33-year service life, approximately $50 to $100 million per year, generate a total lifecycle cost of between $5.1 and $6.7 billion per submarine. The crew of 135 officers and enlisted personnel represents an annual personnel cost of approximately $20 million. And the nuclear reactor that powers the submarine requires no refueling during the vessel's operational life, but requires approximately $300 million in reactor maintenance and eventual defueling at the end of service. The AUKUS agreement, through which Australia is acquiring 3 to 5 Virginia-class submarines from the United States as part of a security partnership with the UK, has a total program cost estimated at between $235 billion and $368 billion Australian dollars, making it the most expensive procurement program in Australian history, and generating extraordinary revenue for the American defense industrial complex that produces the vessels. The commercial submarine economics. Here is the third lane that most people never consider when they think about submarine ownership. Commercial and research submarines, operated by universities, oil and gas companies, tourism operators, and maritime research organizations, represent the most economically rational approach to submarine ownership for organizations that have a genuine operational requirement. A tourism submarine, the kind that operates in resort destinations like Hawaii, the Caribbean, and the Mediterranean, carrying paying passengers to reef environments, typically costs between $3 and $8 million to procure, and generates revenue of between $2,000 and $5,000 per dive, at approximately 4 to 6 dives per day. Annual gross revenue of between $2.9 million and $10.9 million, against operating costs of approximately $1 to $2 million per year, producing margins that make the asset economically self-sustaining in the right tourist market. An oil and gas inspection remotely operated vehicle, which is technically a different category but uses similar pressure technology, costs between $500,000 and $5 million and generates inspection contract revenue of between $50,000 and $250,000 per deployment, making it one of the most commercially rational applications of underwater vehicle technology in any industry. Here is the honest truth about the economics of submarine ownership in 2026. You can buy a submarine, and what you are actually buying is the beginning of a financial commitment that includes corrosion management, pressure certification, insurance that is now harder to obtain than at any point in the industry's history, crew training and retention, and the legacy of an event in June 2023 that proved, in the most devastating possible way, what happens when the economics of submarine ownership are approached without proper respect for the engineering requirements that keep the ocean from coming inside. The gap between the price of a submarine and the cost of operating one safely is the largest gap in this entire economic series, and it is a gap that cannot be bridged with money alone. It requires knowledge, certification, trained personnel, and an absolute commitment to the engineering standards that separate a submarine that dives from one that simply exists at the bottom of a price list. You have been decoded. If this video made you think about what money can and cannot actually buy, subscribe to Money Decoder 3004. Every single week, we decode the economics of the most extraordinary machines and investments in human history. Simply, honestly, and clearly, drop a comment below. Would you own a private submarine if you had the money, knowing everything the economics actually require? Tell me below. I read every single comment, and I will see you in the next decode.